Today I'm going to, while running errands, explore the Jefferson Highway. The Jefferson Highway was an auto trail route that existed from roughly 10 years, 1916 to 1926. We're starting at 18th and Vine, and then we're going to head north. 18th and Vine is on the Jefferson Highway, and it's a very important and iconic spot in the history of Kansas City, Missouri. So we will take a drive down 18th and Vine first, and then we'll turn to head north on the Jefferson Highway. To start our exploration, I've come to the east end of 18th and Vine. 18th and Vine was the African American business district during the era of segregation. Over on the left is the oldest black-owned newspaper in this area that's still existing, the Kansas City Call. And also on the left is the Boone Theater, which is being restored. It's named after William Blind Boone, who was a innovative musician who, of all things, is said to have invented the walking bass line. And a lot of this area is very important to Kansas City and to the world, because a lot of innovations in music were started here. So we're going to pull up to the right over here, and I'll talk about our turn on Paseo, or the Jefferson Highway. This is the eastern branch of the Jefferson Highway. This is how the Jefferson Highway looks through the center part of Kansas City. As you can see, it splits. There's an eastern branch which heads through Missouri, roughly along Highway 71, and now Interstate I-49. And there's a western branch which heads into Kansas. In Kansas, it also splits into an older branch and a newer branch. And here's another view of where we're at and where we're heading. We're heading north. The blue dot is where we are, and this shows the relationship of 18th and Vine, the Jazz District, to the Jefferson Highway. To the north is also 12th Street and Vine, which similarly has a Jefferson Highway frontage. So there's definitely some good historic spots, very iconic spots in many ways. Some of the most iconic on the highway, which Kansas City could use to market and sell itself as a music city. So now we're getting ready to turn right on Paseo, if this green light holds out. Woohoo! It did! Yay! And now we find ourselves on the Jefferson Highway. And we're heading north on Paseo. And as I say, Route 66 has done a lot for the economy of the areas that it has passed through. And the Jefferson Highway, when you get between Carthage, Missouri, and Vinita, Oklahoma, is also Route 66. The Jefferson Highway is a predecessor road. And in many ways, these highways inspired the numbered routes, because there was too many confusing maps and confusing named roads. People couldn't find where they wanted to go, and so they were really wanting the federal government to step in and give uniform funding and give uniform numbering systems so that people could find their way around the country without having to refer to pink houses and telephone poles, because sometimes the guides were pretty much the way you might tell a person how to get to your house. You know, go look for the pink house, and on the corner there's an old guy with a white beard. He's always sitting there, and if you get lost, you can ask him. And you think I'm kidding about that? That's the way it was. And so we are now coming up on 12th Street and Vine. 18th and Vine was the African American business district. 12th Street and Vine was a segregated hotel, barroom area, entertainment district. And There isn't anything really left of 12th and Vine, which is a shame. And this is it right here. This is 12th Street and Vine. Talking about the crazy little women and everything. If you're familiar with the song Kansas City, which is sort of the theme song of this town. Now we're going to try and not miss our turn because I'm not used to coming this way. But this is Paseo, and Paseo is a very beautiful boulevard. Kansas City is known for its boulevards. City fathers wanted to get rid of the cowtown image because it wasn't very attractive for people who wanted to visit here, and so they planned a bunch of parkways or boulevards. And Kansas City has more boulevards than a lot of cities its size, and it supposedly has more fountains than any other city. So we are now at 8th and Paseo, and the next block we're going to be making a left-hand turn, and we'll be heading west on Admiral. Admiral, when you're trying to head south, is a one-way street working against you, so you actually have to take another street, which technically wasn't on the Jefferson Highway, but things change. You should never get so technical about such things. I have to be careful crossing this street because you have to watch for traffic coming at you. And, you know, when you visit these areas, there's a lot of neat stuff here, but you have to be forewarned that not everything is hunky-dory and great. The areas have declined a lot. There are people coming in and they're restoring a lot of the old houses and stuff, and the areas are starting to come back. But unfortunately, you know, the areas where there's concentrated poverty, such as this one, there's also concentrated crime and all the other negative aspects of an area that's health is not exactly the best. And these things people are beginning to discover or understand are actually health issues, not necessarily criminal issues. And when you treat it as a health issue, you begin to understand it in a better light and a better way of dealing with things. And we're coming into downtown Kansas City. Of course, you know, we're crossing over the downtown loop, the interstate, which didn't really exist until, I believe, late 60s is when they finished the downtown loop. I'd like to say 1969, but I could be wrong. And we're still heading west. We're at Admiral and Charlotte. And of course, you know, with the roads being changed and rearranged and everything, with flyover overpasses and stuff, none of that really existed during the time of the Jefferson Highway. And we're going to be turning right on Grand. Although it's interesting when you look at the old pictures of this area, how the roads were sort of routed. Also, if you want to drive around, please take a look at some of the architecture. It's very interesting, like the Bryant building, that building over on the left with the two towers. It's a beautiful Art Deco building. And we're coming up on our right turn, which is Grand. And this is where the Jefferson Highway splits in Kansas City. When I turn right, we'll be on the segment of the Jefferson Highway, which is the only segment, if that makes sense. And it splits here. If you turn left here, you'll be heading towards the Kansas side via Southwest Boulevard. If you turn where we came, then you'd be heading on the Missouri side. I believe that the Jefferson Highway split in Missouri because of the fact that it straddled the state line, and you know, they wanted to include as many towns and they didn't want to leave anybody out. I think there was an argument. I said, well, we'll have two roads at first. I better stop for this light. Sorry, my camera's not mounted very well. I believe that the argument was, we'll have two routes at first because we can't decide, and whoever comes up with a better route, I mean, who does the most work and grades it the best and everything, that will be the route. And then it'll either be the Kansas or the Missouri side. And I don't think that argument was ever really settled. And on the Kansas side, there's a branch that went farther west than I think they really wanted to, and meandered a lot more than they really wanted it to. And that was because it connected a lot of towns that had the good paved cobblestone roads, which was better than the route they wanted, which was not very well finished, dirt, rutty farm roads. But eventually they moved it over to the route they wanted, which was Metcalf. And we're still on Grand, and this is the original part of Kansas City. I'm sorry, I have my dogs with me, and they know when they're really close to the dog park, so you're going to start hearing my dogs go crazy. Oh, I hope I don't get any orange paint on the car. But anyway, this is the oldest part of Kansas City, the farmers market area. And at one time it was named the River Key, but that was more to the west around Delaware. And that's Key spelled Q-U-A-Y, which is like a wharf or a pier, usually related to a river or a body of water. But in Florida, there's a place called the Kansas City Key, Q-U-A-Y, which is an island in the Florida Keys, spelled K-E-Y-S, if that's not confusing enough for you. And here's the farmers market over to our left, Steamboat Arabia Museum. And we're going to be making a right-hand turn on East 3rd Street. And this was the original routing of the highway. And originally the highway crossed the Missouri River at the newly finished Armour-Swift-Burlington Bridge, which was completed in 1911, but it was actually started, I believe, in the 1870s, and had a lot of trouble getting underway. Took it a long time to get a way to get across the Missouri River. Before that bridge, the only way you could cross was either by railroad or by ferry, and there was a ferry landing in Harlem. There were several ferry landings. And here's our dog park. They call it cold storage dog park because of the cold storage lofts there, but I'm proposing that they rename it, what else? The Jefferson Highway Dog Park. I would love to see, that's one thing I think Kansas City could do to help out, is start naming things after the highway. Jefferson Highway this, Jefferson Highway that, and make people aware that, hey, it existed. And also, people could have, we can organize fun runs and things like that. Fun runs being, you know, old cars going up and down the routing of the highway. And this bridge structure you see over here on the left, that's the ASB Bridge. That's the original crossing for the Jefferson Highway. Cars and foot traffic were on the upper pier, and trains crossed and still do cross it on the lower pier. It's still an active bridge, but you can't drive across it anymore. By the late 80s, it was way too hazardous. People complained about it. There were a lot of accidents on it. It just wasn't built for higher speeds. And now we are crossing over the Missouri River, and we're in North Kansas City, which is a completely separate city from Kansas City, Missouri. And I'm going to be fairly true today. The last time I did this, I wasn't so true to the routing of the highway. I'm going to be fairly true to it. Although I'm going to make a pit stop up here. I'm going to go to a gas station. So I need gas. One of my errands today. Whoopsies. And this is a separate city from Kansas City. This is North Kansas City. And a lot of people get confused. First off, by Kansas City itself. Kansas City, the main city, is not in Missouri, in Kansas, it's in Missouri. And a lot of people, when they talk about people from here, like celebrities or whatever, they say, and here's Joe Blow from Kansas. And I know I'm from Missouri. Well, you're from Kansas City. Yeah, that's... and everybody knows there's a Kansas City, Kansas as well, which makes things confusing. And then there is North Kansas City, which is a separate city. And then there, Kansas City, Missouri, is also north of the river, surrounds all these northern cities, and that area is referred to as Kansas City North. Even the locals are confused. It's hard to explain it, and there are a lot of cities like that. Sometimes people refer to Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas City, Kansas as the Twin Cities, but that's Minneapolis, and that's also a Jefferson Highway location. Jefferson Highway not only runs through St. Paul, but it also runs through Minneapolis. Did I just miss my turn? No, here it is up here. I get to talk and I forget. So we're on Burlington, and now we're turning on 14th to head east. This is the original routing of the Jefferson Highway. Now, bear in mind, I'm an amateur at this, so maybe somebody can correct me if I'm wrong about things. When you read about them and get into the actual history of them, they tend to be a lot more complicated. So if I say something wrong, it's not that I'm being malicious, I'm just uninformed. Part of the purpose of doing things like this is to get things out there and people can write in the comments and discussion. There's a new building going up. The corrections and additions and discussions, and that's how you make history come alive, is by not forgetting and by actually holding an open discussion. And people, you begin to realize when you look at history that history in itself is not really a static thing. It's usually an open discussion. There's so many points of views of events and things the way they happened. It's next to impossible to fixate history as one truth, or fix upon history as one truth. People tend to think of history as like cut and dry, but when you study it, you begin to realize, oh no, it's quite an open forum sometimes. Depends on whose point of view you're looking at it from. You have to try and consider them all, which makes it really, actually, in many ways harder than math or engineering or anything you could study. A lot of people don't realize that. And here is downtown Kansas City North. And this is the crossing of, the map is saying, yeah, this is Swift and Armour. You remember the bridge ASB, Armour, Swift, Burlington. And North Kansas City has always been kind of a, how would you say, more like a blue-collar town. It's more of an industrial town. This poor guy is crossing here and may not be able to make the light. But since we moved here, my family moved here in the late 70s. We always knew North Kansas City as sort of an industrial area. But I do like the downtown, and it's coming along. A lot of people are discovering kind of the sort of close-in nature of Kansas City, North Kansas City, to the amenities of the urban area, but also kind of a small town feel of North Kansas City, especially these neighborhoods to the north of downtown North Kansas City. And we're still heading north on the Jefferson Highway, or Swift Street, and we are still in North Kansas City. North Kansas City is built in sort of the river bottoms, and there are some big levees protecting it from the Missouri River and flooding. Ever since the great floods of 1993, the federal government has been telling people not to build urban areas or build up industrial centers or even farms in the lowlands, to let the Missouri River or the rivers run their course. And part of that is to overflow their banks every so often, enough that it becomes very expensive to repair all the built up urban areas. And when you have urban areas that are in the floodplain, you tend to have my dog. There's another dog park here. The dogs are going crazy now again. This is called Wagon Trails Dog Park. Sorry, doggies. It's too cold. Really too cold. All right, we are turning right on East 32nd Avenue. Sorry, Stella. No. There's other doggies there. Why won't you let us play? I'm like, because you guys have got too cold. And there's an older version of the Jefferson Highway, which we won't take, and this version right here. We're turning left on Cherry Street. And this is a kind of a neat area because it looks like it becomes rural. And part of the levee system is right here, too. But when you cross into this area, you can see some of these older culvert bridges and things that are pretty interesting. I like this drive. Hopefully I'm not rambling too much. I know sometimes I forget to finish thoughts as I talk about things. I got two what they call little bugs. One is my vision or logo for what I like to do, and it's over there on the lower left-hand part of the screen, and it says "Travel America's Backroads is where you'll find us," and it's in the U.S. Highway Shield, or the shield with the Great Seal of the federal government. And, you know, of course, us is like U.S. Highway, so haha, clever. And then the other one is the Jefferson Highway. That's in the lower right-hand corner. That's the Jefferson Highway, call it shield. I don't know if you'd call it a shield. In the old days, what they would do is they would come up with a color scheme and symbols for their auto trails. And Jefferson Highway is obviously JH with the blue bars, top and bottom, and a white bar in the middle. And these shields are elongated because what they would do is they would paint them on telephone poles or telegraph poles alongside the road. So you'd have to use a map to try and find your way. You definitely needed the map, but also to help you, they would have the symbol for the road every so often. They also had a regular what would you say, like a road sign. It looked kind of like a regular road sign, and it would say Jefferson Highway, Pine to Palms, or Pines to Palms. All right, now we are on North Oak, and we're going to be turning right on North Oak as soon as traffic allows us. Looks like they're turning right, so we can turn right. And now we're on North Oak. Originally, the highway ran east of here a few blocks, and it's kind of like the rivers. The courses change every so often. Well, the highways, when they originally planned them, they planned them along a lot of rural roads and stuff, and as roads would improve and get better, they might move it, and sometimes it became a sore subject, because if you have a major highway coming through and you build a business like a gas station or whatever on that highway, and then they say, oh no, it's not good enough, we're going to move it, then you as a business person might get upset, because it could be the end of your business and the end of your livelihood. So that's how these associations, which were actually private associations, had a little bit of leverage on people too. They would say, well, we're marking up the highway so people can find their way around, and this is going to bring a lot of traffic to you and your town. So if you want to keep it here, you need to make some improvements. Come up with bond issues or whatever you have to do to make some improvements. Otherwise, we might move it to the next town, or move it to the next block. And a lot of times private individuals like farmers might come in with their own road grading equipment and fix the roads themselves, and maybe wealthier people might pay for road maintenance and things like that, because really the government back then was very hands off, and it caused a lot of problems. The way the government was able to sell to the public and to Congress the idea of government funding of public roads was to say, hey, the military needs to get around. This person here is apparently lost, so we will give them room to be lost. Yeah, the Jefferson Highway, the original course of it was about a block east of here, east of this park, which you're not seeing. And then it turned east and then headed north around the east side of this area. They've been selling off the land, but this area is a Baptist seminary in this whole corner here, and I think it has been for a long time. They've just now started in the past 15 years or so selling off parcels of frontage, commercial frontage. Yeah, Midwestern, I think it's Midwestern Baptist Seminary. And the Jefferson Highway went around the east side of it originally. And as I was saying, people, if they wanted to keep the highway, they needed to make improvements. And oftentimes that took people volunteering themselves, because the government didn't want to step in until somebody said, hey, this stuff that's going on in Europe. And this was right about the beginning of World War I. People were Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. About the time of World War I, people said, hey, if we really need to get our troops across overseas and everything, it's going to take a long time if they have to use the roadways in the United States, because these are all nothing but farm roads. barely maintained by localities and counties, or if at all. Some of them are just like dirt wagon tracks. And we are so far behind Europe. It's embarrassing. And Europe actually had roads that existed for over 1,000 years. Now, Jefferson Highway originally went north Troost to northeast Englewood. And my lines are a little... to North Flora. And right around that area you can see the remains of the railroad, the Kent City, Clay County, and St. Joseph rail line that existed from 1901 to 1933. People, to get around, oftentimes would rely on these little freight car or passenger cars. It would be a single car, look almost like a trolley, and I think a lot of them were gas powered, and a few of them were electric. And they would commute back and forth between towns on those things. And those, the nickname for them are doodlebugs. And they existed, and a lot of times they made quite a lot of money their first half of their existence. But then automobiles did them in when they started building these highways and the roads got better. Which, in many ways is a shame. I wish we could bring the doodlebugs back. Little trolley cars that can go back and forth between the towns. That way, you could live in a smaller town and work and shop or whatever you want in a bigger city. Although commuting like that every day, especially if it takes you a long time, probably wouldn't be so pleasant. You put so much. It'd be like living on the East Coast, where people commute farther from where they work. Like if they work in New York City, but they can't afford to live in New York City, they have to commute an hour or two in every day. And quite often people have to commute to the commute. They have to drive their car to get to the station and park in a big parking lot, commuter lot. Now we're coming up on what everybody knows now as Gladstone, Missouri. But originally this area was Linden, Missouri. And Linden was a town. I'm not sure if it was ever incorporated. Jefferson Highway originally ran around the east side of Linden, and I believe the railroad also did the same. And I think it was a stop on the Kansas City, Clay County, and St. Joseph Railroad. And Linden is if you look at a map, you can see the outline of Linden. It's like several blocks. It's a square grid. It's the original town before Gladstone. I think Gladstone came to be, correct me if I'm wrong, 1952. And there's different stories about how Gladstone got its name, but one was that there was a telephone interchange named Gladstone, and it was named after a British person of note. You have to look that up. And the town just named itself after this British guy. That's one story. And be sure to support local businesses along the highway. There's a nice little coffee house that I like going to right here. We won't stop today. It's Head Rush Roasters. And one of the things that I would like to suggest, if I could be so bold, is bumper stickers for the Jefferson Highway, but not necessarily they're for bumpers of cars, although that would be nice too. But they could be stuck on the doors of businesses or inside the business somewhere. a cheap and easy way of, handing them out to people and saying, you're on the Jefferson Highway, why don't you stick this somewhere? And then people will say, what's Jefferson Highway? And you can give them one of the brochures, and people become educated and go, oh yeah, I've heard of that. It'd be worth something. And you especially give it to local businesses, but I'm sure a lot of the non-local businesses would be interested too. Spark the interest, and maybe we can get a fun run going. And speaking of which, late April of this year, like I believe, it's like the last weekend of April, they're having the International Jefferson Highway Association meeting and festival, and that's going to be held on the Pony Express Fairgrounds, Pony Express Museum grounds in St. Joseph, Missouri. St. Joseph was the headquarters of the Jefferson Highway Association. And also, I didn't know this, there's another auto trail that runs east-west, Pikes Peak Ocean to Ocean Highway. And the office for the Jefferson Highway was also the office for that highway. Another little interesting tidbit of information about Jefferson Highway. Usually these associations had a very wealthy backer, benefactor, or somebody who's really pushed them. Like the CEO of Packard was really big on the Lincoln Highway. The Jefferson Highway's benefactor is, I can't remember his first name, his last name is Meredith. And you should know Meredith because we have a Meredith-owned TV station here in town, which is Channel 5. And that's a hint that if anybody in Channel 5 would be listening, or people know somebody in Channel 5, nudge them with your elbow and say, hey, get on this. Do some stories, Anyway, we are stopped here to get some gas. We're almost finished with our Jefferson Highway journey for today, but I snapped a picture of this map to show that even today there's still some, if there's no signage or museums, there's still some remains. The Jefferson Highlands area, most probably named after Jefferson Highway. And we just got our gas. Exciting. Now we're getting back onto the Jefferson Highway here in a bit. Turning right again on North Oak, still in Gladstone, formerly known as Linden. I was talking about Meredith. Meredith was a publishing company based in Des Moines, Iowa. And Jefferson Highway and Lincoln Highway intersect real close to Des Moines. Not exactly in Des Moines. Actually, I think about 20 miles east of Des Moines. What's the name of the town? I believe it's Colo, Iowa. And I haven't visited. I had planned on visiting a couple of years ago, but the company we were with got really itchy and wanted to get home, so we had to bypass a lot of that. My plan was to take the Jefferson Highway from Winnipeg all the way down to home, but other people prevailed and I wasn't happy about that, so we didn't get to go visit certain places in Iowa that I wanted to see. The Day the Music Died is not exactly on the Jefferson Highway, but it's really close. It's to the west of Jefferson Highway. What's the name of the town? Clear Lake, Iowa. And if anybody knows, the Day the Music Died is the plane crash that happened in 1959 that took out three top musicians of the time: Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, and Richie Valens. And that's one of the sites. You could take the highway and then take a little side trip. It's within the corridors, I would like to say. Now we're coming up on a place called Gashland, and I was like, wow, What a name of a place. There's a little cemetery to the west of here. A lot of people miss. It's in the grounds of the former Metro North Mall. And in the course of doing these videos, I misproperly placed the town of Barry, pretty much where the town of Gashland was. And this is Gashland right here. There's a church to our east called the Gashland Fellowship, I believe. And it's named after the Gash family. And that cemetery is their family plot. And to the west of there, at Platte Purchase Road and Barry Road, is the town of Barry, or was the town of Barry. There's not much there anymore. Might get out someday and walk around that area and explore and see if I can see any. I believe it's Barry. One thing I found is interesting was that in Missouri Town, 1855, which is at Lake Jacomo, there is an old inn, and I believe the inn was in Barry, and it's been restored and moved to Missouri Town, 1855. So go visit that and check it out. I could be misspeaking, but I believe it was Barry. And a lot of these places, we know the names because roads and things like that are named after them. Barry Road and Gashland Baptist Church. That's the name of it. I can see it from here. But we don't realize that at one time these were their own standalone towns, self-sufficient little villages or whatever. And of course, part of the reason for their being here was, I believe, not so much Barry, but Gashland was because of the railroad that came through here. And people could live in rural areas and commute in to the town to shop or work or whatever. But anyway, I'm going to end it here. Price Chopper has nothing to do with Jefferson Highway, really, that I know of. But we're here to get some bread, and I hope you enjoyed the Jefferson Highway. And as always, please, looks like I can get Rockstar parking here. Woohoo! Please leave comments, suggestions. Please like and share these videos. The more I can do these, the more I'll do these. Show your appreciation that way, and let your friends and family know, and who might be interested in this stuff. And until later, that was our tour of the Jefferson Highway. Woohoo!